would try and give you a little bit of history to go with everything, something to carry forward. So I brought a flag, and the flag came courtesy of the Honorable Edward P. Boland, for those of you who remember him. It was flown over the U.S. Capitol, and it was given to my grandmother, Carolyn Putnam, when the building was named for my grandfather back in 1973. So I'd like to present you Principal Traverso. I'd like to echo a couple of things that were said by people. A building is people. It's the people in it. It's what we accomplish in the building that really counts. And so rather than have my grandfather be a portrait on the wall and a name on the outside, I thought I'd give you a few little tidbits on him. You can look him up on Wikipedia and get the history, and I think that Congressman Neal gave you a little bit of it, but I thought I'd fill in a few more holes that you might not appreciate. I'm going to go way back in history. I pulled my aunts and uncle and my cousins to get stories here. And so my uncle wanted you all to know that my grandfather loved to read to people, so maybe he was really a teacher in soul, if not in fact. My uncle has very fond memories of hearing the Just So stories from Rudyard Kipling long before they were made into a Disney movie, read to him in the evening. But he also remembers with more mixed emotions, the Sunday afternoon walks, because one of them included my grandfather taking everybody on a tour of Bondi's Island when it was being built. I guess it's built even then. My aunt wanted you to know that he was very persistent in badgering people in Washington. We had a bad flood in Springfield in 1936, and so he got Eleanor Roosevelt up here, and they did some construction. So in 1938, when we had a lot more flooding, the south end of Springfield stayed dry. On the other hand, and this is for you, Mayor, my grandfather spent 2 weeks living at City Hall. He didn't come home at all for 2 weeks. My grandmother would hop over trees and walk down to City Hall every day carrying a clean set of clothing for him and something for him to eat. But he could not tear himself away from City Hall when the city was in such dire condition. I don't know that it happened quite that way with the tornado, but I'm sure you must have felt it as well. My other aunt, wanted you to know that she is the only descendant of my grandfather to have attended trade, back when it was trade, and this is where she learned to cook. My cousins uniformly wanted you to know that my grandfather loved children, and I think I sum it up best with my brother's comments. He was a military man who fought in both world wars, yet was known to faint at the sight of blood. He was a 3-term mayor of Springfield and a candidate on the Democratic ticket for governor. What you omitted was he started life as a Republican. He also started life as an Episcopalian, and in 1944 in London, when he was at a great distance from my grandmother, he converted to Catholicism. And his godfather turned out to be 18 years his junior, and also the godfather of my son. So I don't know too many people that could boast that one. He served in a cabinet-level position under President Truman, but he got arrested protesting the Vietnam War. He was a successful executive, a salesperson, a political leader, but my brother says, I never met a single person who knew him who did not call him a gentleman and a gentleman. And we know he loved children and was often accused of being one by his wife. So I will close with what I think is probably, there are two things that I could take away from my grandfather. One is he taught me how to speed. The day after I got my learner's permit, I was told I had to drive him in his convertible to his house in the country, and I didn't go fast enough, which is to say I didn't go over the speed limit the day after I got my learner's permit, but it's been downhill ever since. The most important thing, though, about my grandfather is he planted trees. And that sounds silly, but a tree is something that you usually don't live to see in its full maturity. And he was a big believer in planting trees. So Putnam Vocational was part of his tree planting. The community college system in Massachusetts was part of his tree planting. And all of the family would like you to know that we think that everybody here who has benefited from the school is part of his tree planting. Thank you very much.